like I'm missing something, and I'm gonna show you what it is right here. And I did not clip it right, but I am
Oh
prepared.
my goodness gracious. Look at that. Reagan movie 2024. I need to
That's
get one of
right.
those. That's awesome.
How do you have one and I have one?
I have no idea, but I'm going to talk to somebody.
You know what? I had the pleasure of getting it during CinemaCon. They gave us a swag bag,
Oh,
and
cool.
this was in it.
That's awesome. I was at CinemaCon. That's when we unveiled the trailer, I think, for the first time. That was fun.
Yep. So yeah, why didn't you get one?
I've got to figure out how to get one. I didn't get a swag bag.
Bummer. Well, first of all, congratulations with Reagan. And it seems like there were so many obstacles, kind of like the story, I feel like, the journey of getting this film done, just like when it comes to Ronald Reagan himself and his journey in life and as the man, not so much, but film focusing on the Hollywood actor or the politics.
Well, first of all, he has an extraordinary life, an extraordinary story. And yes, I mean, our producer, Mark Joseph, had been trying to get the film made for like 12 years, raising money and finding things, had a director, John G. Avildsen, who's one of my heroes, and he passed away. And that's when the baton was handed to me. And then when we finally got it to go, it was in 2020. So the pandemic hit, so we were shut down. And I remember I thought, oh, maybe it'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it just kept going and going. But we prevailed and started shooting, I think, September 18th of 2020. And then 2 weeks into the shoot, we all got COVID. We got shut down for another couple weeks. And then we regrouped and we changed some scenes around and did it. And then we shut down and we went back to Los Angeles and we shot the scenes at the Reagan Ranch and the Reagan Library on Air Force One and Marine One. Then we went back to Guthrie to pick up the scenes we missed from the year before in 2021. And then we were putting it together. Then there's the war in Ukraine where we were doing our visual effects. And then there was the strike that happened, so I couldn't get any of the actors back in to do their ADR, where we replace the dialogue and pull it all together. So it's been an extraordinary journey to get us to here, and it was never intended to come out in an election year. We made it in 2020 with the idea it would come out in 2021, but now that it is in an election year, the parallels that you see from 40 years ago are just incredible. Like even I'm watching the movie and I went, well, wait a minute, there's an assassination attempt and there's these debates and there's this thing going on with the world like turning upside down. So I feel like it's very relevant right now to see Reagan in 2024.
It definitely is. I was the same way. I was actually watching the film with my boyfriend. I was like, you know what? I think we both looked at each other like things have not changed.
Things have not changed, and it is wild because you see it through the lens of what's going on right now, and it does. Like I said, when I would literally watch the film 2 years ago while we were cutting it together, I was like, I had none of the same feelings because you weren't thinking about what was going on in the world. None of the same things were happening. Today they are. So that's why I think it's important for people to go August 30th and see Reagan.
What were the scenes that you enjoyed bringing to the screen?
Well, my goodness, I love bringing so many scenes to the screen, but one of my favorite was Pat Boone is in the movie. He is plays Reverend Otis, and there's a scene out by the pool when Ronald Reagan was governor, and they're all holding hands, and then all of a sudden he has like a prophecy, and he starts. He starts saying, if you follow in the ways of God, you will end up at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So what was interesting is this really happened and Pat Boone was there. So the first time he told me the story on the phone and I'm like writing it down, I'm getting chills listening to it. So, but when he got to the set, I just said, nobody's going to believe it. And he's in his late 80s. So I said, I need to film him telling the story. So before we shot it, I got the cameras in and just sat on Pat Boone. He told us the story. And then we went and shot it. And I got another actor to play young Pat Boone because he was really there at that little prayer meeting in the foyer of his house when he was governor. So when we got to shoot that scene, that was just like a magical night because it's a true story that happened. And I just thought it was most amazing to have a guy there that was really there, tell us the story, and then we got to film it. So that was amazing. Another story that was there that I got out of Kathleen Noonan's book, When Character Was King, was when he was knocking on doors to get to be governor. and somebody literally looked at him and said, "I've forgotten your name." And he goes, "Do my initials mean anything?" RR. And she goes, "Honey, Roy Rogers is here." And I mean, that was, again, I read it in a book and I think that's going to make a great scene. And I grew up during the Cold War, so there's a lot of scenes. We were under that fear back then that the world could blow up in a nuclear situation. So I put in the scene where he imagines what is going to happen if he hits the button. We have so many nuclear bombs going off with each country, there will be no world left to save. So it was fun to actually shoot what that would look like and what that would be. That was another great film to get a great scene to get into the movie.
I love how you integrated also the relationship with his mother and how we use display maybe why she gets a lot of the credit of some of Reagan's ideas and actions.
Well, Nellie oddly reminds me of my mom. My mom I always called the super Catholic. She'd drag me, and I'm the baby of six, to church every Sunday for the first like 20 years of my life. And Nellie did the same thing with him, and he took to it, and he would read the scriptures, and he'd memorize them and just be able to say them in church. So I think that's an important element, that people say that yes, this is where he got his faith from, his from religion from Nellie, his mom. And I think that that kind of defined who he was and the man that he grew up to be. Because we all get something from our parents, and you get some things from your dad and some things from your mom, and he got religion from his mom. So that's a very cool part of the movie.
And also bringing in Nancy, who's known to have a strong personality, but as Reagan says in the film, that the leader of the free world has a boss.
Well, that's right. Well, beautifully played by Penelope Ann Miller. She's such a talented actress, and she did all the research to get that right. But even Ron Reagan Jr. said that, my dad would not have been president without his mother. Like that, it was the teamwork together that they had he became president. And she was a very strong force in his life and was there for him. And they worked very, very well together. Remember, he was married before, he had kids before, but his life kind of was falling apart. He lost a child. I mean, he wasn't very successful in acting, and that's when he kind of made the move into politics. And then he met Nancy, and Nancy Davis, and then they got married and just formed a bond that was unbreakable and very close to each other. Even when other people couldn't get close to Ronald Reagan, she could. And that's why I think people knew her, because she was there with him and helping him get through his daily life.
Speaking of the turmoil when it came to his career, when things were not going great, also you in the film you show some footage of the politics part, where people were against him, the protest. Can you talk a little bit about including that in the film?
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to tell all the audiences. This is not just a picture about all the good things that happened and who Ronald Reagan was. I mean, he had definite issues. Even before he became president, he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild. They would go on strike. He would get into fistfights with people. And then when he finally did become president, he didn't act quick enough on the AIDS crisis. There was the Iran-Contra controversy. So, we look at politics today and we think how horrible it is and how tough things were. And I go, but I grew up in the 80s. It was just as bad then. And the vitriol that was going on was intense. The world was different. We weren't as such a hateful world that I think comes out. But the intensity of what was going on in politics was there in the 1980s. And I think it's great from a history point of view to look at what life was going on. Our big scare was the Cold War. The threat of nuclear annihilation was very strong on our minds. And you would think, who's in charge of that button that could end the world? And that's why I think it's important for people to see the movie today.
Can you tell me about your experience of being in Rancho de Cielo? From what I understand, everything's intact. What was it like walking through?
Well, that's a magical place. You have to drive up on this 5-mile road that's really bumpy. And I always take my trailer with me. That becomes my office on location. And I had this trailer being pulled up, and finally my truck couldn't even pull it up the hill. It's that steep. But when you get up there, it's like paradise. It has these incredible views. It's like 680 acres of just pure, gorgeous wilderness. And he has this very modest little house right in the middle. He was a very modest guy. It's only like 2-bedroom house, maybe, and it's small, it's tiny. but it is gorgeous. You understand why he wanted to get away to theirs and ride horses and just be at one with nature. And it's funny because they had to build a helipad up there. So when he would fly in, I guess from, Washington to an airport, and then he had to take a helicopter to his house. But as soon as he was done with the presidency, he said, take it out, tear it down. I want to be just back to being a normal person. And I just thought that was extraordinary. But it was to see the house, everything's there, and we got to shoot in it. So what you see is exactly how they lived, down to what was in his closet, what was in the bedroom, what was in their living room, the TVs they were watching, the coffee pots that they made coffee out of. So to have the actual things there that we use in the movie was just extraordinary.
And is it true or not that Quaid was not originally planned to play Reagan?
Well, Mark, I think, started the search to make this movie like 12 or 13 years ago. So way back then, before he even worked with me, he was going after different actors. But then when he came to me, I was like, what about Dennis Quaid? I worked with him on Soul Surfer, and we went to him, and he didn't want to play it at first. And it took some cajoling. We met down at Gladstone's in Malibu, at one of my favorite restaurants, and we had bought him Reagan's hat, and we presented it to him because we knew we had to pull him in. And so again, he wasn't sure. So we said, why don't you come up with us to the ranch? That brought him a little further. And I said, why don't you bring your family and let's go to the library? That brought him the rest of the way. And then he finally asked his mom, and he goes, what do you think? I played Clinton, but, Reagan's one of my favorite presidents, and I'm just scared to play him. And she said, you ought to play him. I think you'd be good at it. And thank God that he actually did it, because he is so good at this role. And he just embodied President Reagan and the humor. And his life mirrors Reagan. He's an actor. Reagan was an actor, and they're both young and, relatively successful at a young age. And I think this is Dennis's best performance of anything he's ever done.
See, the hat works.
It did. Yes.
So, just out of curiosity, when it comes to doing these projects, what is one of the learning lessons you take away from it?
Me personally?
Yes.
I learn something on every film. I mean, my films are like my children, and they just become part of you. So you want to do movies because for the next year or two, if not 6 or 10, this film has taken me 6 years to take it from the day I said yes to the script to it coming out on August 30th. It's a journey, and you get to travel to places and meet with people. And that was like I told you about, we met with John Barletta, who was the Secret Service guy who rode a horse with Ronald Reagan, or Pat Boone, who met with him, and they had that prophecy going on. You get to go and delve into people's lives like you would never have delved into anybody else's life. And people are always excited about making a movie and making it accurate. So it's just like the best job in the world to be able to go and learn about people at the most intimate levels. I mean, the relationship he had with Nancy. I mean, I wish all could have a Nancy in their life that they felt so close to. He used to write her love letters every single day. And I go, my gosh, that's pretty amazing. They both were very lucky to have each other in that aspect of it. So when I make movies, I learn from the people, the subjects that I'm telling. Like when I made Soul Surfer, I learned so much from a 13-year-old girl, Bethany Hamilton, that I brought into my life. Yeah, you don't give up. And in our entertainment industry, it is very challenging, and you want to give up a lot. And it's right when you're about to give up, and if you just go a little bit further, you get past that wave, and you see the next wave, and you can jump on it and ride it. And I just feel like movies for me are, once I commit to a movie, is you're getting on that board and you're going to ride it all the way to the end. And it's going to be challenging, and you're going to get knocked down, but you got to get back into the fight and make the movie. And so it makes you learn. And I think that's the metaphor for people in life. I like to make movies where individuals are challenged, and then they actually, if they fight through, they can overcome almost any adversity. And those are the types of movies I want to make for me and for the general public.
Awesome. And real quick, since it seems I have time, is Dana a real character? Like
Dana Rohrabacher is a real character. He did camp out. It was actually in the backyard of the president's house. Can you imagine just people like camping? But that was like, the 60s. It wasn't as crazy to think that, oh, there's some young people camping out, and they were very respectful. But he did become the scriptwriter when he was governor and when he was in Washington. So all of that is true.
Wow, that's impressive. That was an entertaining scene when he arrives to the White House.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And before I wrap up, I do want to say that share my story when it comes to
Sure.
the Reagans. So my name's Nancy because of Nancy Reagan.
Wow.
My
That's
family were
cool.
fans. My dad loved the Reagan, well, my family. And not only that, but I think they had that connection because thanks to the Reagan amnesty, is that my parents were able to fulfill the American dream.
Oh my gosh, that is the best story ever. Thank goodness. That is awesome.
So yeah,
I
that's
love
the
it.
reason my name's Nancy.
That is fantastic. Well,
So,
there you go, Nancy.
so I had been looking forward to this film for a while too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me to talk about it on your show.
Thank you, and we will see you at the premiere. And I will be sporting the hat. I mean, can't show up without the hat. I hope you
I
get
have
one
got
soon.
to get the hat.
Or I
Very
might
cool.
just have to give you mine when I see you that day.
Hey,
Because you
there
have to
you
have
go.
it.
Absolutely.
All right.
All
Well, thank
right.
you so
Take care.
much. Bye bye.
Lovely to meet you. Bye.